everybody out there. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. Welcome to the Engineering for Change webinar series, or as we call it in our friendly way, E4C. Today, we're very pleased to bring you the latest in our 2012 webinar series. Our webinar was developed today in collaboration with IDE, and our guest presenter is Yi Wei. My name is Yana Aranda, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. When I'm not doing this, I work with ASME, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, where I am a program manager in the Engineering for Global Development Department, and I'm very excited to be here today. So I'd like to take a moment now to tell you a bit about today's webinar, titled Exceptionally Well, Revolutionary, Designing Sexy Toilets and Markets to Deliver Them. One of E4C's topical focus areas is sanitation, and we are glad to have the opportunity to address some of the important issues related to this field today. To do so, we've invited today's presenter, Yi Wei, who is the marketing advisor for IDE Cambodia, to talk about some of the work IDE has been doing. Yi, we thank you for joining us today. Before we get rolling, I'd also like to take a moment to recognize the coordinators of the E4C webinar series, Holly Schneider-Brown, Alex Torres of IEEE, who work with me on developing and delivering the webinar series, are indispensable. Thank you, team. If anybody out there has questions about the series, please be encouraged to contact them via the email address visible on the slide, webinars@engineeringforchange.org. So before we hand things over to our presenter today, we thought it would be a good idea to remind you about Engineering for Change and who we are. E4C is a global community of now over 11,000 and technically minded individuals such as engineers, technologists, representatives from NGOs, and social scientists who work together to solve critical humanitarian challenges, whether in water, energy, health, agriculture, sanitation, or other areas faced around the world today. We invite you to join E4C by becoming a member. E4C membership provides cost-free access to a growing inventory of field-tested solutions and related information from all the members of our coalition, including professional societies like Engineers Without Borders USA, IEEE, the American Society of Civil Engineers, the Society of Women Engineers, and ASHRAE, plus a number of academic supporters like MIT's D-Lab, and a number of other educational institutions, and international development agencies like USAID and Practical Action, as well as access to a passionate, engaged community working to make people's lives better all over the world. Registration is easy and it's free. You can check out our website, engineeringforchange.org, to learn more and sign up. The webinar you're participating in today is one installment of the Engineering for Change webinar series. This free, publicly available series of online seminars showcases the best practices and thinking of leaders in the field who bring leading-edge technology and solutions to bear on global humanitarian and development challenges. Information on upcoming installments in this series, as well as archive videos of past presentations, can be found on the E4C webinars page, which you see the URL for here, as well as on our YouTube channel. So we invite you all to visit us. E4C's next webinar will be on September 20th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be previewing the IEEE Global Humanitarian Technology Conference with 3 speakers from the conference who will speak on the topic of open source software and opportunities for social innovation from around the world. It's a very exciting topic, and our presenters will be Jim Frichterman from Benetech, Hugh May Justina Su from Fo Guang University in Taiwan, and Alex Gaynor of Google. To register, please visit the E4C webinars page where the link is provided here. So a few housekeeping items before we get started. Let's see where everyone is from today. In the chat window, which you see on the right-hand side of the screen, please type your location. Know that any technical questions or administrative problems should also go in the chat window. Feel free to send a private chat to Holly or myself if you have some particular questions. You can also use the chat window to type any remarks that you may have. During the webinar, please use the Q&A window located below the chat window to type your questions for the presenter. That will help us sort them out and make sure that we get to all the questions. If you're listening to the audio broadcast and encounter any troubles, try hitting stop and then start. If that doesn't work, you can use the call-in number for the teleconference. You may also want to try opening WebEx up in a different browser. Following the webinar, to request a certificate of completion showing 1 professional development hour for those of you who need them for your certifications, please provide your full name and date you completed this webinar, as well as the code that we will give you at the end of the session, and email us at eab-ceuadmin@ieee.org. So I want to introduce you to today's presenter. Her name is Yi Wei, and she's a marketing advisor in ID Cambodia Sanitation Marketing Program. It's an initiative dedicated to improving access to sanitary latrines by poor households through market development. After working a year as a water and sanitation advisor on the sanitation marketing pilot project, he's leading the effort to test new, innovative ideas in the original pilot provinces to achieve even greater marketing penetration. Successful ideas will be replicated nationally across Cambodia and globally through ID's international offices and partner NGOs. His expansive experience in the social innovation sector includes arts and design as the Director of Student Outreach at the Art Science Prize, health advocacy as a CPIC Fellow at Health and Disability Advocates, public housing and New Sector Alliance consultant at LISC, and youth entrepreneurship as a curriculum advisor at Junior Achievement Argentina. He received a BA in Social Studies with a minor in music at Harvard University. She wrote her thesis comparing social entrepreneurship and community organizing as different modes of social change from a sociological perspective. We're very excited to have her here today, and I'm going to turn it over to Yi now to take us through the presentation.
Hi, everyone. I am really excited to be speaking with you tonight, and thank you so much for listening in on this presentation. So today's presentation is going to be about the latrine, and I'm using the latrine as a case study to explain to you how IDE has used human-centered design thinking to design something that is traditionally taboo, unsexy, and take it into something that people want to buy, and just as importantly, designing markets around the product to deliver the product. So I'm speaking to you from Cambodia right now. I've been here for almost 2 years, and it's just been a blast. I hope you guys have lots of questions for me at the end, and yeah, get excited about sanitation. It's one of the hottest issues right now in development, one of the most important, and unfortunately one of the most lagging Millennium Development Goals currently. So around the globe right now, 2.5 billion people do not have a toilet, so that's about 40% of the people in the world. And most people don't know this, but diarrhea-related illnesses kill more children than HIV, malaria, and tuberculosis combined. And unfortunately, until very recently, the resources going towards solving diarrhea-related illnesses haven't reflected the role that diarrhea and poor sanitation plays in poverty. So we're working within a sector in the context of a history of lowering subsidies, free toilets or heavily subsidized toilets that have depressed demand for toilets. When you give something away for free, people don't want to pay money for it. And so that's stymied private demand and therefore the development of private sanitation markets. It's also discouraged sensitive ownership. We found research that shows when you give something away, most people don't feel like they own it. And there just isn't enough resources to give everyone a toilet. When you give it to them, sometimes we've seen them be turned into chicken coops, feeding troughs, and so we want to find a more sustainable way to solve the sanitation crisis. I'm working currently in Cambodia right now, which has one of the poorest conditions when it comes to sanitation. So Cambodia is a country of about 14 million people. 85% of the country is rural, and it's a very rural, poor, dispersed population. Average annual income of the rural population is only $335 a year, so less than $1 a day for a lot of people. Latrine coverage is 23% nationally. In the rural areas, it's even worse, about 18%. One of the most prevalent programs in sanitation in the development world is CLTS, which stands for Community-Led Total Sanitation. And that's been a dominant program until market-based approaches to used for improving sanitation. And what CLTS does is it tries to get an entire community bought in on agreeing to build or buy a toilet. A lot of poor people don't have the means to buy toilets, and so they build a toilet and the toilets collapse, and people don't want to use crappy collapsed toilets. And so there's a high reversion rate with CLTS, which is, again, one of the most dominant programs that's used by the development sector. Cambodia also is a very governance-challenged region. So I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the history of Cambodia, but in the 70s, the country faced a decade of civil war and had a massive genocide that wiped out many millions of people. And so politically, the situation is still relatively unstable. And so government is laden with corruption, with lack of infrastructure, and so government hasn't been really a viable option when it comes to developing public infrastructure. That being said, when it comes to sanitation, the majority of existing latrines in households have been purchased through the market. So the majority of existing latrines right now were bought by people. And IBE is a market-based organization. We leverage the private sector to alleviate poverty. And why do we do that? In the case of sanitation, markets already existed. Like I said, most of the existing toilets out there were purchased privately. However, at rates that we came into, it would have taken more than 100 years to reach open defecation-free status, what we call ODS status, when everyone in the village or everyone in the community has a toilet. So sanitation markets can function regardless of government support. Whether we have local government officials supporting us, the market, once developed, can function without external public support. And interestingly, if you think about it, toilets are rather finite. There's only so many toilets that will be purchased. However, when you develop markets of toilets, the markets not only support purchase of toilets, but developing markets can also support access to other products that households need to improve their quality of life. And so we really think the market is really powerful in alleviating poverty and giving people access to the goods and services they need to move out of poverty. The market for sanitation exists in Cambodia, and so that is a huge opportunity given the low penetration rates of latrines. So many people don't have latrines. That means a huge market for latrines. However, until now, the supply chain businesses didn't believe that there was a market opportunity because they saw that most people in their communities were poor and latrines were expensive. So their business model was high margin, low volume. They would sell to the wealthy and charge a high margin for it. So traditionally, the businesses do not think the poor as potential customers. So we had a design challenge. How do we design a product that was affordable, that the poor of Cambodia could pay for, that was accessible, meaning that they could easily access and have as beliefs of a resistance, path of resistance to accessing the toilet, and aspirational, something that they wanted. So that's on the consumer side. On the demand, on the supply side, we wanted businesses to be motivated to sell latrines. So developing a product that would give them a profit margin that would encourage them to continue selling. So we used methodology called human-centered design. We worked with IDEO and the designer there to understand what users needed, wanted, and desired, and users being all the major stakeholders along the latrine user experience. So including suppliers, masons, villagers, local authorities, speaking to all the major stakeholders along every step of the process. We faced three main design challenges. The main one, is there weren't sanitation products that were affordable, accessible, and aspirational. So we needed to design a product that was the three A's. We also needed to make sanitation a greater purchase priority in the minds of rural households. So prior to IDE, there had been many NGOs and programs out there educating people about the importance of sanitation. When you talk to people and you ask them, why do you have diarrhea? They're able to regurgitate and say, well, probably because of the dirty water I drink. Why is your water dirty? Well, probably because I don't have a latrine. So it wasn't that people weren't aware of the messages. The messages then just didn't drive purchase intent. It didn't make them really want to change their behavior. Thirdly, we needed to convince enterprises that latrine sales could be a big business opportunity and that they should invest their own resources. So in order for this market-based solution to be sustainable, we needed businesses themselves to be invested. IDE could not, continue subsidizing. So we needed businesses to want to invest their own resources, take the risk, develop products, and sell products that would be profitable for them, interesting for them to continue selling. So I'm going to go through a couple of the design challenges that we faced and later on talk about how we overcame them. So there are many purchase barriers for households. First of all, they were offered way too many choices. People really didn't know how to build a latrine. They kind of knew what they wanted in a shelter. Everyone wanted the nice concrete shelter, but not everyone could afford a nice concrete shelter. And so NGOs and government came up with this thing called the Informed Choice Manual, where they basically had 4 different slots of flip charts, giving all the different permutations and possibilities, and people just didn't know what to choose. So users faced the paradox of choice. They were paralyzed because they have to do too much analysis, paralysis by analysis. Next, the purchase process for the user was very difficult. If a villager wanted to buy a latrine, they would have to go find the village mason, talk to the mason, ask the mason what parts they needed. The mason would write down a list of parts that the villager would need to collect. Then the villager would have to go to different stores, compare prices, and oftentimes collect the different parts from various stores. The villagers then would have to arrange their own transportation. A lot of these folks don't have trucks that can carry the different parts. We're talking about a concrete product, a heavy, big, and so it was a very arduous purchase process, and there really weren't any options between $0 and $100. So you had the $0 latrine where you basically dug your own pit, or the really, really nice Taj Mahal latrines, concrete, tiles, wash basin. But few people could actually afford that. Thirdly, as I mentioned earlier, the market failed to treat the poor as customers. They saw their community members as being poor and therefore not being able to pay for such an expensive product. However, what the market didn't recognize was that poor people are just as concerned about social status, about what other people thought about them, just as much as rich people. And so we saw that, the statistic in Cambodia, there are more cell phones than latrines. So cell phones were a purchase priority because they conveyed status, and people saw a direct benefit to having a cell phone. And so we needed to overcome the perception that latrines were unsexy, that latrines were not important, and really leverage the social and psychological motivations for purchase in consumers. So we needed to redesign the entire sanitation experience from the supplier all the way into the consumer. We talked to a bunch of people, the masons who built the latrines, the ring producers who made the latrine parts, retailers who sold parts to shelters, villagers themselves, everyone in between. And so what we came up with was the easy latrine. And the easy latrine incorporated aspects that were desired by most people. Everyone wanted a pour flush latrine, which means you use water to flush after you go to the bathroom. And what we learned is that in Cambodia, especially, water is especially important for the idea of cleanliness. So if they wanted a toilet, they wanted to be able to have water. The dry pits, what we call the holes that they dig, and CLPS programs often were very non-aspirational because it didn't incorporate the water element. The other thing people wanted was an offset pit. The offset pit, people thought, would prevent smells, and again, smell seemed to be a big issue. If things didn't smell, then it wasn't dirty. If they smelled, then they were dirty. And so we needed to incorporate the main aspects, pour flush latrine, offset pit. And we were able to design it so that it retails for about $30 to $35, which is rather affordable for the really poor. And so as you can see, the product itself is not mind-blowing aesthetically. It's quite aesthetically humble. But what was very remarkable about it was that it was a center for a lot of design changes surrounding the product. So the changes in the product catalyzed changes in the user experience and therefore helped create a sanitation market. So right now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the insights that we learned through the HCD intense user insights process. When we speak to users and we ask them why they don't have a latrine, one of the most common answers people give is that, well, we're poor, I can't afford it. And so a lot of times people will say, we could buy a latrine if it was $10. And so early on, we tried really hard to design a latrine that was actually $10. It was something like a bamboo bucket. And no one wanted it, of course, because it wasn't an aspirational product. However, the latrine design that we came up with, the easy latrine that retails for about $35, you put it on the market, and people are willing to buy it, despite the fact that they kept saying, no, we only want a $10 latrine. And so we also needed to make it easier for people to purchase. So instead of having the user go around town asking lots of questions, doing their own research, we needed to create a product in the process of purchasing that was easy, hence the name Easy Latrine. And so it's the confluence of these three factors: affordability, aspiration, accessibility, that we found the sweet spot. You need to achieve all three in order for the product to really launch. These are some of the insights that we gathered from the HCD process. So in HCD, we sit down with a user and just understand their lives, what they do when they first wake up to the moment they go to bed, what they worry about, what they're proud about, and understand how their lives relate to their sanitation experience. So as I mentioned earlier, people wanted pour flush latrines because water equals clean. They wanted an offset latrine for smell reasons. The concrete shelter was the most preferred, the most aspirational. Towels were a big deal, and a ceramic pan. They wanted thick rings because they thought it was sturdier. And they wanted a latrine mostly because of dignity and pride. When you ask people initially, why do you want a latrine, oftentimes the first answer is, well, because of health and I don't want to get sick. When you really, really dig deep and try to uncover the real reasons, a lot of times it's because they want to feel like good hosts when their visitors come. They feel embarrassed if their relatives from the capital come to visit and they don't have a toilet to offer. or if their daughter is getting married and they don't have a toilet to offer. So dignity and pride was identified as definitely one of the biggest purchase drivers, just as the same reason why people quit smoking. I think most smokers realize the health detriments of smoking, but they don't really quit smoking until there's a social aspect. So some of the other insights, again, keeping up with the Joneses, neighbor influence is huge. When you interview a villager and you ask them, well, what is your ideal latrine? What latrine would you want? They immediately point across the street and say, I want so-and-so's latrine. They don't say anything about the product. It's all relative to their neighbors. As well, we found that aggressive marketing is really effective. Previously, for businesses, they would just wait in their little shops, and when someone's interested in buying, then they kind of sell you a product. But businesses really didn't get out there and really sell and market the product. And so that was an insight about the supply chain that we needed to leverage and change their behavior on. Another interesting insight that we learned was that garment factory girls were big purchase drivers. So in Cambodia, there is this growth in manufacturing and textiles. And so a lot of young women from the countryside have found jobs in garment factories. And these women are some of the prime users because they're the ones who are most affected by the lack of privacy. Sanitation, hygiene is often a very woman-focused issue. A lot of girls drop out of school because when they hit puberty, there are no facilities for them to go to. And these garment factory workers, girls, are now starting to earn income. And so we're experimenting with certain programs targeting these girls as a market because they are most open to buy. And so through HCD, we understood the user better and who some of our target market was. And so the design outcome was remarkable for the consumer because it was easy. It was easy to buy, it was easy to use, it was easy to build. So no longer does the user have to go to several different shops to collect different parts. Now the suppliers produce the easy latrine as one package good. So you could buy the whole thing at one place, you know where to go. It's easy to use. It has all the aspects that people want. It's core flush. It's upgradable. So given that it's only the underground parts, people can build the shelter that they want. And you can start with a bamboo natural shelter and work your way up. It's also easy to build. It's designed so that the household themselves can install themselves if they want to, so they don't need to hire a mason and save that money instead for other things. It was also quite remarkable for the supply chain. So there were several innovations on the supply side. We developed a crane system, very simple crane system you see here that improved the efficiency of production. We also developed a new concrete mix that was both cheaper, used locally available rice husk ash that at the same time made the input materials cheaper but also stronger. It strengthened the concrete. One of the most important innovations here is the chamber box. Unfortunately, it's not shown here, but previously the household would have to hire a mason, skilled labor, to build this box, this catchment box out of bricks. So we designed a mold for that where the latrine producer could just pour concrete in this mold and it would be simple, and it eliminated the need for bricks and skilled labor. As a result, the businesses were able to shift from their high margin, low volume model to a low margin, high volume model. They were able to produce latrines faster and more cheaply. We also taught them the importance of doing after sales and marketing. So having sales agents in the villages holding sales meetings and going door to door making sales instead of just waiting for the customer to come to your shop. The local businesses have been encouraged to work with local government because local government does hold influence on villagers. And just engaging all the important stakeholders in the consumer's purchase path. So this is why the design was remarkable for the supply chain. As I mentioned, it shifted their business model. And it was a great business opportunity for each latrine. Businesses make a profit margin from $5 to $10. And so if they're able to sell 100 latrines a month, that's $500 in profit, which is already way above the national per capita for rural areas. Businesses saw the opportunity in sanitation, and they were willing to invest their own funds. So in the beginning, in order to prove the concept that you can make sanitation a profitable business, IDG had to handhold some of the early business partners we worked with, guaranteeing their loans. But after the first two, the others in the neighborhood saw their peers making deliveries back and forth, and they realized this was an opportunity. They asked to be trained in sanitation marketing and invested their own money. Businesses have hired sales agents. They developed a sales agent network, working with local government officials. We have realized that in the rural areas, given certain contexts, timing matters. There is a seasonality in Cambodia. When everyone is planting their rice, they have already invested their money in fertilizer, agricultural inputs, and so after harvest, when everybody is cash rich, that's really a big sales push. And so just understanding the different dynamics of the context and maximizing opportunities. So in addition to innovations in the supply chain and also in the user side, IDG developed a social marketing campaign that really played up the aspirational aspect. And so this was one of the logos we used a lot in our materials. And in Khmer, it reads, "Have a latrine, have a good life." And so previously, a lot of sanitation messages were focused on embarrassment, disgust, and we recognized that people are motivated by those factors. But at the same time, people also wanted something nice and to feel proud. And so our social marketing focused on the aspirational. Therefore, a lot of the marketing that the businesses did were very aspirational. The sales agents talked about what it felt like to have visitors come and to be able to use the toilet, and marketing became an activity that businesses took upon themselves. There's no longer the need for heavy government activity or NGOs. So the private sector, motivated by profit, stimulates demand for this aspirational product. We've had very, very exciting results. So after the pilot project, which lasted about 16 months, over 17,000 latrines were sold. Of those 17,000, almost 11,000 were easy latrines. And so that was way above the average rate of sales. And what we saw was that the easy latrine generally increased demand for sanitation, and other businesses that sold other kinds of latrines increased sales as well because demand in general increased. The majority of people were extremely or very satisfied with the product. And interestingly, a lot of the easy latrine owners tended to be poor, so lower middle income. And what that validated was the fact that even poor people need to be treated as customers, and they want to have the dignity of being able to make a choice in the market about what they want and what they don't want. Overall, there was an 8% coverage increase after 16 months. So that's very, very impressive, given that the national rate of increase is less than 1% every year. So those were some results related to coverage. We also had really strong results related to supply chain, and that's important because we were looking to develop a sustainable market to deliver this after IDE pulls out. And so we trained 29 businesses who continue to sell latrines and do marketing and sales. They saw an average of 259% increase in their annual revenue, and they increased their own investment in raw materials by 155%. So the market has been bought in. They recognize this as an opportunity. And the results show that there's an increase in latrine adoption that's been greater than what's been achieved in the past 4 years combined. Unfortunately, I can't see this too clearly, but this is a chart that shows the cost effectiveness of sanitation marketing. So by leveraging the market in the private sector, we're able to design a sustainable ecosystem that continuously delivers product to users for cheaper than most other programs. And that's the end. So the RevoLootionary is a really, really interesting case study about how design can be used, not just for product design, but designing a whole system of from the very first step that touches the user to the suppliers to everyone else involved, and how deep user insight can really create a lasting solution. We are currently scaling up this pilot. We're working in 7 provinces across Cambodia. And as mentioned in the bio, I'm going back to the original pilot provinces to figure out how we can help these businesses sell even more toilets. And we're working on some very interesting initiatives, including partnering up with microfinance organizations so that households have access to financing. No longer will they need to pay in one stop $35 that they can pay over 6 months. We're looking to design a shelter for the latrine, and that's something that is actually an opportunity that some of you might be interested in. We're looking to package the shelter as a product like we did the RevoLootionary. And so if any of you are interested in that opportunity, feel free to contact me at YWEI@ide-cambodia.org. Sanitation marketing has really gotten international attention for this method of using design, and the private sector can improve sanitation. We're expanding globally, and we have an opportunity in Zambia and are looking for a designer engineer who will be working with the Zambian team for 6 months to also design a latrine solution for the Zambian context. So these are some of the opportunities and projects we're working on to expand the RevoLootionary. So let me know if you have any questions, and I'm happy to discuss further.
Thank you so much, Yi. This is a really nice, concise presentation, and also quick, so we have lots of time for questions. So one request we had come in today was if you can go back to the slide, and actually I believe I have control of the deck now, so I can take us back to the budget numbers again. So that was a request. Here we are. And while we're looking at those, there was a question that came up regarding which area of Cambodia and provinces you are working in right now. I think you mentioned it quite quickly, but maybe if you can go over that again.
Sure. We're working in 7 provinces. There are a total of 24 in Cambodia. And there are several other organizations doing sanitation marketing programs in Cambodia. And so other NGOs, other development partners have recognized America's sanitation marketing. So we're really happy that the sector as a whole has embraced this methodology. We're working in Kendal, Fighting, Siem Reap, Wantiamache, Kampong Thom, Obermanche. I will have to go through the list. I can send that to everyone later on.
Fantastic. We have another question. The question is, do the communities you implement in have access to clean water? Do you think that is a requirement before putting in sanitation infrastructure?
That's a very good question. Some communities do, some communities don't. And so one of the recognitions by the WASH community, which stands for Water and Sanitation Hygiene, is that diarrheal diseases are caused by 3 main problems: poor sanitation, poor water quality, drinking water, and poor hygiene, so lack of hand washing. And so as a sector, we're moving towards having more integrated solutions. Definitely not all communities have access to clean water. Some of them have filters, some of them have boil water, some of them use flocky ones. So there are many water solutions out there, but unfortunately, there's none that's been standardized by the government. And so, yes, that is definitely one of the challenges. We need a three-pronged approach. The government is moving towards that. The sector partners are recognizing that needs to be an integrated wash approach and not just one or the other. So, yes, very good question.
We have one other question with respect to the price point. This is, you talked about the differences in the price of the latrine, $10 versus $30 to $35. Do you think there's a good way to establish an appropriate price point for a product without bringing it all the way to the market?
To be honest, in our experience, no. You can ask people what they're willing to pay for, and unless they really have to do it or are provided with a real choice of doing so, it's never completely accurate. We are currently doing studies on people's willingness to pay through like a game to understand the price demand curve along what price or what percentage people are willing to pay, and that's an acceptable proxy for like a study to understand the market better. But in terms of really understanding what the market is willing to pay, you just kind of have to do it. And that's one of the principles of human-centered design or design thinking in general, just rapid prototyping. Even if you just work with two villages, put it out there in the market, see what people are willing to pay for it or if they're not willing to pay for it.
So I think related to that, there's a question that came in, so I'm just going to group these two. The question is, are you able to share the survey or list of questions that you used to understand what the users wanted? And this sounds like it's related to human-centered design. This person feels that it sounded like the questions went beyond sanitation.
Yeah, the questions definitely went beyond sanitation. I'm not sure if we have the questions still from the original pilots, definitely from the most recent user insights research. I can share that with you. And that was trying to map out the purchase process, understand purchase priorities, purchase drivers, and we asked everything from what was their last major investment to what was their last major investment to the health, what they were most proud of in their family, a lot of questions about their income streams to better understand what they're able to afford and what their priorities were. So, yes, it definitely went beyond sanitation. Sanitation, we needed to understand, often for many people, played a very small part in their lives. And the question is, how do we get it to play a bigger part in their lives?
Great. So we'll try to get those questions and share them after the webinar. One more question came in terms of design and some alternative designs. Here the question is, do you suggest alternative designs for high water table environments? Standard glue design may be flooded when storm events occur.
Very, very relevant questions, and we're currently working on a design.
Hello?
It looks like we lost Yi.
Oh, no. Yes, it appears that maybe we've lost Yi. Oh, so sorry. She was just in the process of answering the question. It might be that she lost her connectivity from, she's calling in from Phnom Penh in Cambodia. So as all of you know, whoever worked in the developing world, brownouts and connectivity can be an issue. So why don't we give her just one more minute to return? As I can see someone said, "Been there." Indeed, to return to us. If we don't get her back in about a minute, then we will certainly have her follow up on all of the questions, especially those that she didn't cover, via email. We'll communicate with all of the participants on today's webinar following. So why don't we just give her a minute? There is a question that came in around the process, which I can certainly answer. These webinars are indeed archived, so they can be shared and listened to again. If you go to the webinars page, what you will see is that we have actually scrolling all the way down a section called Archived Webinars. If you click on any one of those, it'll bring you to a page which indicates the speaker for the webinar, the day that it happened, information about the webinar, and a recording of the webinar. If you are not able to download the recording or it takes a little bit of time, the other option, of course, is also to go to E4C's YouTube channel. And that's probably the easiest way to go about getting the recording. On our YouTube channel, you'll see a list of the previous webinars. So you can feel free to share them that way or to go to the page. So no problem, you'll be able to actually see that webinar again.
Hey guys, I think I'm back.
Oh, fantastic. Welcome back, Yi. So we got you, we lost you while you were answering a question about alternative designs for high water table environments. So if you wouldn't mind starting again?
Yes, so very relevant question. Definitely we are working on design for what we call challenging environments. And in Cambodia, we've picked two main challenging environments that affect a lot of the country. And those are seasonal flooding and high groundwater. And so we're working on those design solutions right now. The current solution isn't suitable for those environments. It contaminates groundwater, or the floods block the train and people can't flush. And so, yeah, current solutions in the market or that people have done oftentimes on their own to elevate the latrine, but that isn't really a hygienic, a sustainable solution. And so, right, absolutely, we're working on that.
Fantastic. We do have some other questions, and while I am doing that, I'm just going to bring up information about the webinar series for those of you who are asking about recordings and such. So another question for you, Yi, is from the perspective of Engineers Without Borders, I'm assuming USA, and here it says, EWB has projects in a number of locations with karst limestone. We have needs to provide latrines for schools. Is there a good source of information for design?
I'm not sure what the question is about. Is it about the limestone? Is it about school-specific latrines? Is it about using HCD? Can you clarify?
Sure. So we'll wait for that one to get clarified. And while we're waiting for that, there are others. I mean, you're getting quite a few questions, so we're going to get to
great. This is great.
One of the questions here is regarding maintenance and repairs. How do you manage the maintenance and repairs of your latrines?
To be honest, the usage of latrines is so early that we really don't know. And I think one of the big questions that the sector is wrestling with is what happens after these pits fill, and that necessitates a more holistic solution to sanitation. The question of what do we do about waste management? How do we extract it? How do we treat it? Is there any way we can introduce it into the market so that it's used as fertilizer? Those questions have really not been answered. From a household point of view, maintenance, people who buy a latrine, who like their latrine, do take care of it generally. They clean it. Earlier latrines in the market, some people have hired people to pump out the waste. Others have emptied it on their own, which really negates the hygiene, sanitation benefits, health benefits. And so it's a really urgent question. And as you'll notice with things like Gates' toilet challenge, more and more people are starting to recognize this as an urgent question, but there haven't been too many answers that have been tested in the field yet.
Well, maybe this is a topic we can explore in a future webinar based on some of the learnings from groups such as yours and others as you guys take these through the full life cycle. So thank you so much for that suggestion and that question, because I certainly think that's a very value-added piece of information. Another question that came up is regarding resource recovery. So is resource recovery a consideration for toilets in Cambodia? Is it culturally appropriate? Is there a historical tradition or precedent for that kind of thing?
Yeah, so this is very related to the previous question. Resource recovery is definitely being investigated by many stakeholders. There are projects working on biodigesters. We're actually investigating right now the possible role of limestone to be used as a treatment additive, and limestone is also good for agriculture. It improves the pH of Cambodian soil, which is very acidic right now. And in Cambodia, there are mixed perceptions about reusing waste, especially human waste. A lot of people already reuse animal waste. Historically, during the Pol Pot regime, during the genocide civil war years, a lot of people were forced to reuse waste, and that's left a bad taste in many people's mouths, as you can imagine. No pun intended there. But some people do say that, they remember using human waste and crops really improved. There is also issues around whose waste are you using. It seems like if you use your own family's waste, that's okay, but if you want to commercialize it using other people's waste, it seems to be less appealing. There's also the idea that waste, if it still looks like waste, is disgusting, but if you transform it somehow, if you mix in animal waste, if you maybe perhaps turn it into pellets, that it might be more acceptable. To be honest, these are all very early insights. We're actually in the midst of doing this research in the field, and as a sector, we need to pay more attention to these questions because there's a lot of potential for waste reuse, but whether it's marketable and desirable is another question.
Yes, that's a very good point. We've done some stories on E4C regarding that, and we're happy to share them with you all. I believe Rob, our reporter, can probably put up a link for you guys to read about some other organizations that are dealing with similar issues. This one is from a group that did a lot of work in Haiti called Soil, in terms of using human excrement as a fertilizer and some of the challenges they face. So certainly a very pertinent topic. We did receive some clarification around the question that came up earlier with the latrine construction, and this individual is interested in learning about, your recommendations on good design for schools, and this specific school is going to be getting their first latrines for approximately 30 pupils. Again, to reiterate, the question is, this is from EWB in a project in a number of locations leveraging karst limestone, and these are latrines that will be built for a school of approximately 30 pupils. So if there are any recommendations that you have regarding information, I do believe another participant replied with some information, but maybe you can share some of your go-tos.
Sure. So IDE's work as it relates to sanitation in Cambodia has been focused on the household level. There are specific organizations that do work on schools as the entry point. One that I am familiar with in Cambodia is BORDA, B-O-R-D-A, and they do what's called DWAS. And DWAS stands for Decentralized Wastewater Treatment Solutions. And so I think they do the whole life cycle of waste. It's quite expensive because of that. And I'm sure they would have better information for school-specific sanitation solutions.
Fantastic. So I've hit, I think, all the questions that we've had from our participants. I'm going to just give everybody an opportunity to ask one last question, if you have it. All right, so it looks like we've hit them all, and we've managed to actually wrap early. So that's great news for us. I'm just going to share with everybody on the presentation today information about the professional development hours. If you are looking to get them, please send that email to the address listed previously. I will put that up again with the PDH code 0911YW. You can also send us any additional questions or questions for Yi that maybe you didn't come up with or are burning after this presentation or you've been inspired to ask at the address below, webinars@engineeringforchange.org. And I'm just going to bring you guys all to that first slide, which has our information on how to get your web PDH hours. There you go. Please email eab-ceuadmin@ieee.org. And with that, we're going to come to the end of our webinar. I'd like to thank you all for participating from wherever you dialed in from or logged in from. And a very, very big thanks to Yi for taking the time to chat with us and battling the connectivity issues. And if you have any other questions, please do feel free to send them to us or to Yi. And we look forward to catching you on our next webinar. Again, for those of you who are interested, we do have an upcoming webinar, September 20th, just 9 days away, and it's going to be on open source software opportunities for social innovation from around the world. So I highly encourage you all to join us. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day, evening, and or morning, and we will catch you on the next installment of the E4C webinar series. Take care.
Thank you.